Whoa. Hey guys, if you're like me, then you missed out on buying Bitcoin 3 years ago, even 3 months ago. It would have been a great investment. But, you know, that's okay. There's a lot of discussion going on about Bitcoin right now, and I guess all this cryptocurrency. So here's what we're gonna do today. We're gonna recreate one of the most popular crypto wallet apps on the market right now, and that is Coinbase. So if you want to learn how to make your own crypto wallet while, you know, the topic's still hot, stick around and we're gonna get through that. So if you're new here, my name is Muda, and I'm here to help you learn how to be a designer, or a better designer if you're already a designer. Or if you want to learn this important skill of creating human experiences, this is the place you should be. So welcome, and let's get into this tutorial. So to start off, we're gonna create Coinbase, and I've grabbed a few screenshots from, I took my phone and took the screenshots. Okay, I'm gonna create these 5 pages. We're gonna follow my process on how to do this sort of work. We're not designing from scratch, we're recreating. This is really good practice if you're new, if you're a beginner and you just want to get used to designing and using the tools, or you learn a lot from actually picking up other people's design. Like, you understand how they've set up their grid, you understand how they've created their components, and it's a really good lesson. But to get started, step 1, get these screenshots. Step 2, we got to identify the components. Now, so here we have our button. The first screen is going to have the most, but this is good practice. We have our button. So I forgot to cut to the screen, so let me explain what's going on again. We have all these screenshots. We're going to follow my process, which is to identify what your different components are first. And then once we have all the components, we can go into designing those components and then putting the screens together. Got it? Got it. Okay, so here are all my screens, and here are all the listings of the components. Okay, so I've identified all the different components that we need. It's quite a rough list, but it'll help us when we decide to, it'll help us organize at the very start, which is a big thing to make sure you're not wasting time designing. So being organized and being able to use these little shortcuts to design is really what's going to help you get ahead and produce as much as you can and not waste time with the little things. So we're gonna do the early setup first, and then we should be able to rush through this a bit later. So I've got all my components, it'll help us organize. Next thing we're gonna do is we're gonna get all the colors set up. So right now, we're gonna do a crash course on setting up color styles. So basically, what we're gonna do is, we're basically just gonna select all these colors and turn them into color styles. So first one is this blue. To add it as a color style, you click on these 4 dots here. So it's an icon for style. And as you can see here, these are the colors from my other design libraries. We're gonna ignore those. I'm just gonna click plus, and then we're gonna add this color. So we have a set of primary colors, and that's what I assume this is. I'll just call it primary blue. Okay, great. Now the next color we're going to take is the button. Usually you have a set of different color ranges for like a certain color. We don't have that right now because we're just designing, so I'm going to call this one button green. Okay, so I'm going to call this one button green. Now we need more primary colors, so I'm going to take this white. White in itself is just you know, you should, it's good practice to put it in. So primary slash white. Okay, we need to get this blue here. Let's take that. This is usually done, I mean, when you're designing, you usually just set an opacity, but for our purposes, we're gonna just take it as is, so we don't have to think about it too much. So let me add that. Blue, I'll call it blue +1 because it's a brighter blue, or I guess plus, we'll do +3. Okay. We have this orange. Let's take the orange. Oh, whoops. Orange. So something I like to do when I set up my colors, I like to set them as zeros and then 1, 2, 3, 4. What you can also do, however, is I guess you can set it as 100 and then go down and up by tens. This is just naming structure. It just depends on how you want to set it up. But because this is easier for us, we're just going to go with 0, 1, 2, 3, and then darks will go into the negatives. Okay, we have this purple, so let's name this purple. This is going to be our base purple, so we're going to give it a 0. This blue and this blue, are they different? Huh, okay. Well, let's see. Is it different? No, they're pretty much functionally the same, so we'll leave that. We don't need that. We're going to need to take this background color actually though. So let's take this background. Background's pure white. Okay. Then let's take this gray. Damn it. Let me get it. Okay. So this gray indicates a state, so we're gonna create a new class, or like a new color class called state, and then I'm gonna call it unselected. Okay, now as you can see, state's at the bottom. I like to have it at the top, so I'm gonna go into my color styles and then just move it above. So to get to color styles, just select on nothing, just click the backward, and you should get your color styles. Okay, next, let's see, do we have any colors? Oh, black, we haven't gotten our blacks. You know, sometimes apps like to take full black, other times they have an offset of black, so it looks like this one isn't full black either, but for the purposes of this color system, we're just gonna call it black now. That's usually what I do, it's never truly black. Okay. We're gonna need to take this green. I'm gonna take it from here because it's bigger. Is the same button green? Ooh, is it the same? I think so. Let's try and get it again. Let's look at that code. 6F, okay. 6F, it's the same color, it's the same green, okay. Well then we don't need to get that, we already have that in our styles. I'm gonna assume these are the same colors, so we don't have to worry about that. This orange I'll assume is the same. And we got it all, okay, nice. Let's see, what's going on here? Okay, so this shape, or like this graph, is created with a gradient underneath it. I think we already have the gray, so we don't really have to look for that color anymore. So we're good there. Okay, do we need this? Do we need this gray? Yes, we do need this gray. Okay, I'm gonna assign it a new color. looks like it could be a primary gray, so let's just call that. I know it indicates a state of selected or unselected, but it's not really a selection, it's more of a filter. So, or maybe we'll rename it. So if you want to rename something, go into your color styles and you can click edit style, and we'll change this to state and change this to filter unselected. I'm gonna assume the blue is the same blue as we've been using, so we don't have to touch that. Okay, let's see. Let's have a look at the rest of the colors. So we have this disabled button. Let's just change this. I mean, let's grab this. Okay, so we're gonna name it button blue disabled. So we have green and then we have disabled blue. And this color set should be the same as the others. Okay, we're good. We don't have to think about it. Now, next step is to get all the textiles. Now, I know this is a lot of setting up, but it's just what you have to do to make sure you're designing at an optimal rate. So we're gonna go in and we're gonna recreate this text and then try to attach a textile to it. So I know from their website, as you can see here, that they're using graphic. Now, how do I find out what fonts they're using? Download this plugin called What the Font, and you can just inspect other people's fonts. So their app will most likely follow their website. That's like 99% of the time. I don't know what the 1% is, but 99% of the time you'll get the same fonts on their website, so you can just inspect that. And we know that it's graphic, so I do have graphic, the font, so I'm just gonna get it up. And we're gonna try to recreate the sizing for this. So it looks like it's 28 pixels, but usually you have, 28 size font, but usually you have a bit of a spacing reduction. Okay, so -5%. Sounds reasonable. Let's see, is this the same here? Nope. Okay, so this one was a 22. I'm pretty sure, no, it's not regular. It's not semi-bold, maybe it's 20. Okay, it's 20, but the spacing is not at 5%. It's actually at, let's try -2%. -2%. So -2% is the spacing for this. Now I'm just gonna recreate all of these fonts, all of this type first, and then we'll go in and set the styles. This is most likely 16 because that's the smallest that you can use. Yep, it's 16, and the spacing is actually negative, so -2 as well. Okay, I think that's standard. Now, sometimes for overlines and captions, you'll have a smaller font size. It won't go too far down, but I'm guessing that this is either 14 or 12. Let's find out. It's 12, okay. Let's see what else. Now I'm gonna give these all an arbitrary purple color just so it's easier for us to see later. Why didn't this turn purple? Actually, no. We'll use my red from my design system. Okay, so these two are the same. Oh, okay. So for bottom nav, you'll usually have a special case of tiny, and in that case, it might be 10. And 10 is the correct amount. 10 with the -2 spacing. Okay. It's probably best that we set all of this to auto, and I didn't do that for the others, so we're gonna have to go back and do that. You know, apps will have their own custom line height, but oops. For this tutorial, I'm not gonna fuss with that. You can go into this later. I'm gonna leave this, or I'm gonna post this up on my Figma community. So if you haven't yet, follow me on Figma community. It's just @Izzy. And yeah, you can make the changes to the line height yourself if you figure out that I was completely. My typing is horrible today. Okay, time to get into the coin list component. So I'm gonna guess that this is a 14, or is it 16? Ah, I was wrong, it's 16. 16 with the regular and 0 line spacing. No, could this be bigger than 16? Yes, it is bigger than 16. Is it 17? It's 17 with the 1% line spacing. Okay. Now this underline, probably a 14. Let's see. No, we're using 12. Consistent. Okay, good. Easier for us. Now when you're creating textiles, usually you have a different textile for numbers, and that's often called display. So even though it is the same, just for, you know, ease of editing later, it's best to just call it display. Why is it called display? Because you're displaying numbers. Okay, so this is 18. Why are they different sizes? I don't know. If anyone has the answer to that, let me know, and you can teach me something new. Okay. So the percentage is using a different display size. Okay, 16. Damn, there's a lot. Okay, we're gonna do the textiles for this. If we find more later, I'll update those. But yeah, let's just finish this, and then we'll be good to move on from this point. Actually, you know what? I'm gonna finish this, and you guys can come back when it's done, because this is gonna take a few more minutes, and I don't want to waste your time. Okay, I'm back, and we have everything. Now we're gonna try and avoid creating duplicates, so let's just select everything. Let's get all of this, all these highlighted colors that we created. And I forgot a few. Okay, let me just explain what we're doing, and then I'll go back and get those ones. So I've selected all the different layers that were there, and then I've aligned them to the left so we can just easily take them out of the screen. Let me go in and add this button one. So what we're gonna do now is we're going to create all these different styles now. First of all, we're gonna have to name all the different styles. So let's do that. I guess we'll call this one header 1, H1 basically, and then button. So I like to give a text style name for the buttons just because, you know, it's a bit more straightforward. You're not focused on whether it's H1 or H2, you just know it's button. Even if it ends up being the same as a different type of text style, we just call it button. We'll call this one overline. This one will be, what was it, 16? Okay, we'll call this one paragraph. Paragraph, bold. I'll call this one H1. Header H1, button, primary. Rewards is, this was a header, but I think it's equivalent to an H3 or an H2. We'll just call it H3. Now, I'm using these H tags for the mobile only. Once you start creating something that's desktop and mobile, this naming structure doesn't really work that well, or at least these H tags don't work very well. So just focus on the fact that I've created this hierarchy and don't focus on the fact that they're called H1 and H3. When you start designing for web as well, it's going to be a bit different. So just keep that in mind. Learn was the same. They're both headers, right? Okay, so we can just delete this one. Home was for the nav, so I'm going to call this navigation. Just call it base. Watch list was a header. This was, what was this? This was display, so we're going to call this one display H4. We call it H4? Yeah, we can call it H4. Okay. Bitcoin was, what was the same as paragraph? It was 17. I'll just call it, I'll just call it coin. We'll give it its own text style, just for the coins. It looks smaller than the rest though, so we'll call it we'll just call it P2. And then here we have, was this the same as the overline? 12, 1. 12, -1. This is bolded. Overline, semi-bold. We'll call this one overline, or regular -1. This one was called display H2. I'm gonna assume there's something bigger. The input amount, that's the biggest H. So H2 works here. Civic was an overline, but it's the same as before, so we'll just delete that. USD is the same as regular. Oh, this is regular 1. Okay. So we have a regular 1 and we have a regular -1. Okay, so those are all our text styles. Now, what we want to do is we want to turn these all into text styles. So how do we do that quickly? Now, normally you would go here, you'd click this plus, and then you'd name it to whatever it is. So this one, for example, would be overline regular 1. Overline slash regular minus 1. But that's a really time-consuming process, and we're not going to do that. What we're going to do instead is we're going to use this plugin called Generate Textiles, and what it does is it generates textiles. So you can search Figma community for this. I'm just going to use it because I already have it, and yeah, so that's what we do. Just click this and wait a bit, and here we have 12 textiles were created, 0 textiles were updated. So let's say later you want to update this H from bold to a from a semi-bold to a bold. You can, and then you just run the generate textiles again, and it'll update this textile. Now how this works is that it looks at the name of your textile and then it checks your textile list. Damn it, I left this one in. So we're gonna delete this. Where is it? Is this coin P2? Yeah, we're gonna delete this because that shouldn't be there. And we're gonna delete that textile here because that should not be there. How do we delete this? Right click, delete, okay. Yeah, so it takes the name here and then it turns this name into a textile. Okay, we've set up our textiles. As you can see, they're all here and they're all beautiful. If you want to change the textile, you can just go into the side and then change whatever you want based on whatever you named it as such. And now that we have our colors and we have our textiles, we gotta figure out our grid. Now, I know that this artboard size is the size of an iPhone. Actually, let me redo that. I just realized that you guys have been watching without keyboard tags. So sorry, but now that it matters because we're designing stuff, I'm gonna bring it in. So we're gonna take this one as an example, and I'm going to Command-Shift-G to build a frame around it. So before it was just an image. Now you can see that here, it's just an image here. Now we have a frame, so I'm gonna just rename this as screen number 1. Okay. And I know that this is an iPhone size. So an iPhone is 375 diameter across, and then the height is 812. So let me just visualize that for you. Where's our headers? Okay, there's 375 this way, and then 812 this way. What we're trying to figure out now, though, is we're trying to figure out what the grid system they're using is. Now, to set up a grid, you go to the right-hand panel, click on your frame, and then click on this plus, and then you can set up a grid. By default, it will give you a 8-pixel grid. We just want to get the columns, and I'm going to assume there's a gutter of, actually, I'm going to assume there's a margin of 8. No, they're using 16, aren't they? Okay, so a lot of designers either use 16 or 8 or sometimes 24 if you really want to, you know, I guess make a lot of space, but usually 16 is the way to go. So once we have our 16, the gutter can be whatever you want it to be, but usually there are 6 columns, and I usually work with a gutter of 8 or 16, but we'll go with 8. Or 0. No. We'll go with 8. Oh yeah, something that I probably forgot to mention was that you should go here, go to your nudge amount, and then change this to 8. By default, it's 10. A lot of the times when you're designing for mobile or like anything really, people use an 8-pixel grid. So just set this to 8, and then when you hold shift and an arrow key, so like this, it'll jump by 8 pixels. So if you look up here at the Y, look up here, the Y, it'll jump to 260. You see that? It's a nudge jump. Okay, but anyway, now that we have the grid, I'm gonna take this and then we're gonna turn that grid into a style. And we'll just call it mobile grid. Okay. Now we have our mobile grid, and it'll help us design to the right sizes. I'm just gonna turn the, so if you wanna hide or show your grids, press Command G, and it'll turn on and off. Well, I wanna get this border color. Let's get it. Is it a style yet? No, it's not. I'm gonna add it. I'm gonna call this primary light gray. Okay. So we have our grid. Next thing we want is our effects. Luckily for us, the only effect I see is here, so let's just try to recreate that. The effects don't really matter that much, just set it up first. I mean, you don't have to be that accurate, but you do want to set it up so that you can you do want to set it up first so that later on you can just, you know, if you need to adjust it, you can adjust it. Like once you get the actual dimensions, you can adjust this properly. I don't know what they are, but I'm just gonna guess that it's these. This is like super arbitrary, so don't take this one too seriously. We just need to set it up. So here we go. I go in to set it up, and I call this elevation 1. Actually, let's, you know, we'll call it level 1. I don't know where else it's used, but when we need it, we have it. Okay. Okay. So we got all our styles set up. Now look at your local styles. You have something here that you can use to recreate any type of, I guess, crypto app. It doesn't have to be Coinbase, but you have this basic set. Now, when it comes to creating these things, I always like to have an icon set with me ready. So, you know, finding the icons isn't really the point of this video. So I'm gonna go off, find the icons, come back, and then we'll get started. Okay, I'm back, and we have our icons. Basically, it's just these icons with a few extra little ones added in. Here you can see our glorious 8 icons. Okay. Now that we all have, now that we have all of that, we can start going into the screen and creating things one by one. So earlier on, we found out what the different components we have are, and that just makes our life so much easier. So let's drag this down and get to work with the components. Now, when you're creating, we'll just knock this off from, I guess from the top down. Now the first thing we're gonna have to create is I guess the buttons, because that's what's on top. When you're creating buttons, there are a bunch of different variants. I'm not gonna do all of them now though. I guess we can stick to this active state, and then we'll avoid the disabled state for now, just because we don't know what that is. So I'm gonna go in and actually let's do this. I'm gonna move this image into our artboard. Now how I created the artboard is I pressed A to bring up this artboard selector, and then you can go in here and you just select which artboard you're going to use. This is an iPhone 10 screen, so I'm going to go with iPhone 10. Now let's lock, we'll bring down the opacity to 50%. You just click 5 and it goes to 50%. I'm gonna make sure you have the image selected though, because you don't want to bring the opacity to the wrong thing. Okay, so we have the image selected. I'm gonna go here and I'm gonna trace a box around this one. And then change the color to green. You see how convenient that is. I think they're using an 8-point roundness. Is it right? Yeah, okay. And you can also go in to change this. 51 button height? No, that doesn't seem right. 52. So what you'll notice when you start designing a lot, or like once you start working in teams, the buttons don't align to a perfect grid, and that happens from time to time when you go from design to development. But yeah, it's a 52 pixel height button. Okay, now we can put our button text in here. I'm just gonna call it, we're gonna call this label. And then we go here and we select our button text style. Now where is it? I think it was at the bottom, button primary, okay. And our color, white. Now we want to align this center. This we allow to expand with the text flow, so it'll expand across once more text comes in. But right now, basically, that's your button. And we just, wait, we're gonna need to turn this into its own frame. To do that, Command-Shift-G. Now it's a frame. I'm gonna name it button primary. Nah, not primary. I don't know what the primary structure is here. Button green active. What? Ah, I forgot to press enter. Button green active. Okay, don't press escape. Press enter. Now we're going to turn this into a component. So just press this and we got our first button component. Congrats. Okay, next thing we're going to have to design is this card. So this is a notification card. You could call it an alert, you can call it something else, but right now this is what we got. Go ahead and pressing 5 to bring down the opacity just so we can check what's going on underneath. This is just a base, so we don't really have to be too accurate. I'm gonna call this overline. Now, because we did all the pre-work, we don't have to think about this. We just go in, we find our overline, and we use it. So overline, this is semi-bold. And then our text is gonna also be, our text is gonna be bold, our paragraph is gonna be bold, so. Body. Now what I like to do in these cases is that, when you get the dimensions first, so it's 16 pixel padding on this. So now that we know it's 16 pixels, we can drag it across, keep 16 pixels from this side. Okay, perfect. And then I fill it with lorem ipsum. Let's give it a second, auto-generate, and it should fill out. So what I like to do here is that I remove the beginning of this lorem ipsum and replace it with body so that we know this is the body. Also, the next thing that you should do is rename this layer so that it's body, so that when you reuse this component, it'll maintain the naming structure. Just if it doesn't make sense to you, don't worry. It's just a good thing to do. Just do it. Okay, now the way this button behaves is that this might always be here. So let's go ahead and get that close icon. Okay, so this is the icon that I got earlier. As we can see, it's bigger than the icon that I have. Usually a button will be 32. I don't know what this one is. It's 30. That doesn't make sense. 29 makes even less sense. We'll go with 30. It makes a bit more sense to me. Okay. Now we want to turn this top section into a frame. So I'm gonna click. No, it's not gonna work. So we know the padding. We're gonna want to turn this card into an auto layout card. Maybe I'll explain that a bit later, but for now you just gotta pay attention and hope for the best. So I'm gonna select everything that we want in the card, and then I'm gonna click this button here to turn on auto layout. And as you can see, it put everything together. Now this thing is still here, it's not part of our group. So let's just move it out for now, just for the time being. And let's inspect this and just see if it aligned with what we expected. Okay, so the paragraph is actually, this isn't the perfect paragraph. The height can't be set to auto. Maybe it's 150%. Not 150 either, it's somewhere close though. Okay, maybe it is 150 and I just messed that up. Let's just go in and change it back to 150. Is it not? So 160. Okay, 155. Now this should be growing based off of the contents. I don't know why it's not. Let's see what's going on here. Okay, so we originally set this to fixed height. I want to change this so that it grows with the content. So to do that, you go into the text styles and then you change it from fixed height, which is the one at the very right, to the middle one, which is auto height. And it'll resize based on the content. So we're gonna set the roundness to this. And then we still have to include this X here, right? So I'm gonna put this into the card. And because it's a, I guess it's a close and it's too fat here. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna click Command G and stretch this whole thing out to fill the container. And then I'm gonna pull this over. And because we want the height to be shorter, we're gonna shrink this until it matches what we want. So let's see underneath. How is this set up? What are the dimensions? So this isn't actually 8, just spacing to 0. Change the spacing to 2. Okay, there we go. And this needs to be 16. Now the reason we can do this is because the top layer, it's contained in a frame, so you got to make sure that this close button is contained within a frame. Okay, so we've just created our first component. No, we're still going. Come on, come on, come on. And remember that shadow that we created earlier? Let's go add that in. There we have it, our first component. I mean, our first, yeah, okay. I'm gonna set this to 50%. Maybe it's 30%. Not bad, not bad. I think there's more spacing at the bottom though, so let's go in here and change that. I don't know what it is, but I'm too lazy to check right now, so we're gonna go with this. Notification. It's a card, so we're gonna call it card, and then it'll be card/notification. Now this naming structure matters when you're trying to set things up for your component library, just so that it's organized. Just follow along. Okay, so we're done with our first card. Now we gotta do our rewards card. And then we have a whole bunch of other ones to go through, so basically it's the same process, it's just the same thing over and over again. So I'm gonna get this done, and then we'll go back into the tutorial once we have something more interesting to talk about. Cool, okay. Okay, so I'm unpausing for a second so that we can work on this, or I can show you how to work on this. So what this is, it's the bottom navigation, but it's constructed out of basically a base component, or like I guess you'd call it an atom, and then we have this navigation item, and then we have this icon button. So let's just create that together, and then I'll pause again and we'll come back another time. Okay, so this thing is basically created out of a icon and then a text label at the bottom. So just call this home for now. We're gonna set that to the navigation text that we found earlier. And we're ready to basically turn this into an icon already. So actually, let's get the alignment right here, and let's just set the color so that we don't have to do it later. Okay, so I'm gonna turn this into a group or a frame. So I'm gonna press Command Alt G. Oh wait, did I even select both of them? Command Alt G, now you have both. And we're gonna extend this by a few pixels. So to do this, to drag it out without it, to drag it out from the center, press Command and Alt at the same time. So, how's this? 6, 7. Are these even aligned? Oh, it's not going to align. The text is okay. Seven, 5. We'll do 8. 8 pixels. Let's raise it to, okay. So basically 8 pixels all around, okay. There's not much we can do about that. So we're ready to turn this into a atom, or I mean, we're ready to turn this into a component. Let me rename this so that it's called navigation, and we'll call it, just call it an item for now. Now we want to make sure that this is called label, so that later, if we want to change things around in our components, it's a bit more easy to convert certain objects to other objects. So we have our item. This is active state. And now let's make the inactive state. So I'm going to call this one inactive. And we're going to change these colors from this blue to the gray state that we had selected earlier, or that we had created earlier. So here's state, and let's turn this into component. Now what we're going to do here is we're going to turn these into variants. So we're going to combine as variants, and voila. I don't like the way this is set up, but I'm going to change this from navigation to navigation item. And then once we're inside, we can delete this property because it doesn't really work. Then we're going to change this property to state. So now every time you drag out the item component, you can either change it from active to inactive. And there might be a disabled state, but I don't know. Okay. So now that we have that, it's time to create our icon button here. So 40 pixels. The icon inside I think is 16 pixels. Let's just get that transfer icon. Here we go. Yeah. Okay. I'm pretty sure it's actually a 24 pixel icon. I just don't have the right icon. So we're just gonna turn this into a component, Command-Shift-G to turn it into a frame, and let's rename this to button icon blue active. Okay, let's just center this, and let's change this color from this gray to our button blue, and then we'll change our icon color to white. And let's go ahead and turn this into an icon. We should be creating a disabled state, click state, or I guess a tap state. But because we don't have the screens for that, we're not going to. Maybe we'll do it later, but not right now. But anyway, we have all the different icons that we need for this. Or I mean, all of the different elements that we need for this. So let's just go ahead and let's just go ahead and take our components and create a navbar. So we're going to change this icon to the portfolio icon. I forgot to change the prices icon, but right now it's this graph. It's an upside down prices. And things are moving backwards. Exactly how it should be. Let's change this icon. Okay, so to get in, just double click until you select the right layer. It might take a few tries before you get used to it, but yeah, that's how Figma works. Okay, so we have everything. This is kind of the rough spacing of everything. Now let's use auto layout to get it all selected. So I just press Shift A, and let's bring this up just to compare it with what is actually there. So it's pretty accurate. This one might be spaced a bit, the spacing might be a bit off, but for what we're doing, I think we can live with this. Let's just see, 36, is that a multiple of 8? Let's just go 32, what happens? 32 is even worse. We're sticking with 36, okay. Now, because we want to turn this whole bottom bar into a component, I'm just going to go ahead and create a frame for the bottom bar. So I selected that auto layout frame. It's still here. We're gonna call this buttons, and then we're gonna call this, I guess we'll just keep calling it buttons. And then this will be our frame name. So this will be the component name. I'm gonna call it navigation bottom nav. And don't forget that top line up here. So let me just get a white line and add it into the design. So here's at the very top. I'm gonna assume it's this light gray that we found earlier. Okay. So let's drag this out. And there we have it. We have created our bottom navigation using wait, what's going on? Whoops, I named the wrong thing. Okay. Okay, so we've created our bottom navigation using nested components. Okay, so that's your little nested component tutorial. I'm gonna go finish this and then I'll see you guys once everything's back. I don't know why I said back, but we're not done. But I did realize that we created all the components that are needed for this screen, so might as well put together the screen, right? Okay. So this is our first screen that we're gonna recreate. Get our iPhone frame ready. And let's just start moving things in. Let's set up our grid so that we have something to reference for our positioning. And we'll just start moving these things in. Our section header. And we have our bottom nav. I realized that I forgot to add a base color to this, so let's go add that in. Okay. So for the navigation, you want to set it to bottom and then fix positioning when scrolling because it doesn't move. And let's create this top part here. Ready to trade, question mark. When you're creating a design system, something that you should define is tone of voice. You know, whether things are capitalized or not. In this case, you know, it's not every single letter that's capitalized, but in some cases it is, so it's good to know that. I'm going to change this to left align so we don't keep getting moved around. This one should also be left aligned. Okay. Hi, Izzy. I guess it'll be Izzy M. So I like using auto layout. It just helps position things nicely. Whether it's accurate or not, it doesn't really matter, but I can change it later. Okay, 32 sounds like a proper, I guess a proper auto layout distance. And then this will be auto layouted again, just cause I feel like it. What's it set to? 26 doesn't seem very likely, but 32 is more likely. And it's not 32, so that's a bit weird. It's not 24 either. Is it? Okay, well I have no idea why it's this. Is it 28? Okay, well I have no idea why it's 28, but it is. And now that we don't need the auto layout anymore, I'm just gonna break the auto layout and then hold Command when you drag up like this so that you don't move things around. But I'm just gonna turn this blue, turn this white, and then we're gonna turn this into our light blue that we found earlier. So this is a blue negative, okay. Change this to fund account. Now you see this, it's growing to the right. To the right, it shouldn't be. I need to go into the design and fix that. You could just fix it here, but it's not the best way to do it. So let me just click into this, go to the component, go to main component, and then make sure that this is set to center line. Now if we go back, it should have fixed itself. There we go. Okay, so this I'm not going to bother changing. This looks good. We gotta set the distance here, so I'm gonna. It should be. I think it's usually 16, so it's always a multiple of 8. So it could even be 8. No, it's not 8. It looks like it's 16. So yeah, 40 between the different sections makes sense. I have this block here for a placeholder image because I don't have any illustrations right now. And when I created this shape, I don't think I used the right font, but I couldn't be bothered to find the new style. So this is what we got. And look at that. It looks like Coinbase. Okay, so let's recreate the rest of this. Actually, no, before we recreate the rest of this, let's just clean up our designs. I'm gonna select everything and organize it by space, put a little space between each one. Let's just stick our cards together. Navigation should be together, the buttons should be with the other buttons. So let's just go in a bit more, okay. Losange and buttons can be close together. Okay, so for the time being, this is all that we have, so it's a bit easier to manage. You know, you don't have to be so structured, but once things, once we start building this out a bit more, it's really good to stay structured. I put this in the core visuals page, which I shouldn't have. It should be in a components page. And let's go grab that. So I separate core visuals and components because the visuals are for, I guess, more of a brand identity type of thing, whereas the components are, you know, what you use to design pages with. So, you know, maybe you change your brand identity and you can change your whole set of icons, but these cards tend to stay the same, or these different components tend to stay the same. Now let's unlock this. Look at that. From a distance, you can't really tell which one's a screenshot and which one's your design. Oh, but look. I did forget to add this bell, so let's go in and add that bell. Now when you're using auto layout, if you try to add something in here, it's just gonna knock everything else down. What you can do to combat that is press Command Option G and turn this into, now this is in a frame. You can see it in the layers here. You see that? It's in a frame. I'm gonna stretch this across. What was that? Okay, so we want this to stretch across, and we want this container, this frame to also stretch across. So let's go like that. And then at the very end of this, I'm gonna put our bell. So let me search for the bell. Knock that over to the side and recolor. think it's resized. I think this is a 32 pixel icon. You see, so all these little things that about, you know, how big the icon should be, what colors and how to position things, you learn this by recreating. So this is like a really good reason why you should recreate design systems, or why you should recreate screens. You learn all these little things that you would learn on a project if you were on a project, but if you're not and you just want to try to figure things out, this is like one of the best ways to do it. Reverse engineering. Okay. There's a bit of a shadow there. Let's add that in. Again, we go back to our design system, or we go back to our components and make the changes at the component level. This will ensure that it gets fixed on all the different screens. Okay, perfect. Okay, so what is next? You know, we might as well finish this whole screen. That means 3 more, or I guess 2 more pages of components. So I think I'm gonna stop this video here. Thanks for joining me. You're not gonna see it, but I'm gonna keep going, and then if you wanna learn how to do the rest of these components, you know, you have this beginning section, which is a tutorial on how to set up your styles, and then you have the next section, which will be a tutorial on how to create the rest of these components. It's been like an hour, and we're cutting it here, but come back for the next video where I show you how to do the rest of the components. And yeah, you should be able to see this file in my profile on Figma community. So go check that out and just follow along, or just use it to design your own crypto app. So thanks for joining me. If you enjoyed this video, if you want to learn some more, come back again. I'm going to be posting videos multiple times a week. I don't have a schedule yet, but I will have videos up, so don't worry. Just subscribe to the channel, like this video, and I'll catch you guys later. I'm doing another hour of this, just so you know, to finish this. So come back, watch the second video, but I'm not going. I'm just gonna keep going.